New tournament, new recaps. This is round 1 of the February Swiss event. My opponent's name is Jamison, and he plays 1d4 against me at 60-minute time control with a 30-second increment. I play knight to f6. Our dynamic Slav course recommends d5, but I wanted to keep things flexible here, maybe look for some more aggressive options. Bishop to f4 played, and now we see a London already on move 2. I didn't have one system prep for this specific game on the London, but I do go for my favorite London line, and I have another game in this that I'll link to at the end of the video. I play d5, c5, and then bring the queen out really early, pressuring this pawn on b2. Now the most common move here is queen to b3, and there's this forced sequence that could be played, pawn to c4. Now queen takes b6 is probably the strongest move, and I'm not going to go into that here, but if queen to c2 is played, there's this cool idea, bishop to f5, hitting the queen, and the queen can't take the bishop because we take on b2. So this is a line that I thought he might play into, but instead he plays knight to a3. Now I'm thinking knight to a3, I don't have a line prepared for this. What am I supposed to do? If I take on b2, I know knight to b5 is the idea. It defends c3 and threatens knight to c7 fork. A lot of players are very prepped up in their lines, especially a London player playing this system. He probably has seen this before. I did not want to take the bait and play queen takes b2. So instead I played c4, thinking I will try to transpose this to that main line that I just showed with the queen coming out to b3 and back to c2. And I'm going to lock up the queen side. And I know that this knight is misplaced on a3. So when I play e6, white is going to want to move the knight away so that I don't give him ugly pawns with bishop takes a3, b takes a3. So queen c1 played, defending the b pawn. He doesn't want queen takes b2. Bishop to f5, that's the natural square for the bishop. And now I play pawn to h6. The idea with h6 is I want to play e6 without allowing white to play knight h4, trying to trade his knight for my bishop. I figure if white trades the knight for my bishop, then white gets the bishop pair, and I know the position will eventually open up, whether it's white playing e3 or b3, or black playing e5 or b4. At some point, the position will open up. It's going to be valuable to have the bishops. So that was my idea. Knight to e5 played. The computer says this is a small mistake. During the game, though, I found this very difficult to face because my plan is to actually play e6, make that knight retreat, and then I would like to move my queen away and play pawn to b5. And the reason pawn to b5 is important is it's a nice way to meet b3. So if white takes here, my pawn can take back. I have the b pawn ready to meet white's b pawn. But with the knight on e5, it hits my knight on c6, so I can't easily just move my queen away and push the b pawn. So I found that annoying during the game. The computer does say a small mistake. All right, e6 played, threatening this capture. Knight has to move. Bishop e7. And here I make a mistake. I drop my bishop back to h7. And I think I was afraid of white playing g4 right here, going all out for the attack. And I asked my opponent after the game, I said, were you thinking of pawns for me if I castled? He's like, yeah, it crossed my mind. And I already saw him play knight to a3 early, which I think is a move of an aggressive style player, allowing me to take on b2 like that. I did not want to walk into that kingside attack, so I said, okay, I'm going to slow it down just a little bit, drop my bishop back to h7 first, and then I'll look to castle next move. Because I think at this point, white pretty much has to castle or play b3. So he does castle, I castle, b3 played. Now, during the game, I wasn't feeling super confident here. I actually felt that maybe white had a small advantage if either side did. I just didn't like the pawn structure that much. So I took a takes back, and now I see white wants to play pawn to c4. Thematic move, just trying to gain extra space in the center. So here I played knight takes e5, and I really like this decision. White has to either take with the bishop or the pawn, and typically in the London, you'll see the d pawn capture back here. And the reason for that is it kicks this knight, and when the knight moves away, sometimes that weakens the black king side. But in this case, I control the light diagonal. That's a key difference. White only wants to go for that line when their bishop is sitting on d3. When the white bishop is on d3 and this black bishop is somewhere else, that's when white gets the attack against the h7 square. In this case, I have full control of the diagonal, so that's not an idea for white. Okay, so here bishop takes is the stronger move, but my opponent plays d takes e. Now the rest of my game focuses on one bad piece. This is very similar to that last video that I recorded in the King's Indian defense where the queen almost got trapped. Now the white bishop on f4 has no good ways to get into the game. Look at the pawn on e5, look at the pawn on e3. It's sort of like a tall pawn, but the pawns are flipped 90 degrees. The pawns are on the side, making that bishop a bad piece. So I played knight back to d7, trying to apply some pressure to this pawn. And I want to make the game about the queen side because look at how both of these bishops cut across the board to the queen side. And then I have the c file for my rook. My queen's already over there. My knight's already over there. And this poor bishop on f4 is having trouble getting back into the game. Pawn to c4 for white. Critical move. White wants to play c takes d5. I put my rook on c8, lining up with the queen. Queen b2. Now I play knight to c5. I'm trying to create a little bit of activity here. And I'm also looking at knight to d3, forking queen and bishop. And if white takes, I take back. But either way, I'm gaining that valuable bishop pair in this position. Rook to c1 played. And around this point, I was thinking queen to d4 is a nice looking move for white. So I decided, let me put my rook back on d8, even though I just played rook to c8. Probably not the most accurate move order. I want to be ready for this queen coming here. And at this point, I'm playing a very prophylactic style. I'm trying to look at what white's plans are. I'm trying to control everything. And then I'm slowly going to increase my advantage. I don't feel in any rush in this position. A good move, though, that would have been an improvement for me is pawn to a5. Keeping control of this b4 square. And now the white pawns are kind of stuck. White could play c takes d5. That's probably a good move. But after that, what is he doing next? I'm going to take back with the e pawn. So c takes d. E takes d. That pawn is controlling the advanced squares for white's knight. All right, so I played rook d8. C takes d, e takes d. And again, I didn't play rook takes for that same reason. I want this pawn to control squares for the white knight. And here my opponent played rook takes c5. And this move really gave me pause. I was thinking, oh boy, what did I miss? Where are the tactics? Why did white sacrifice a rook for a knight here? And I asked him after the game, and it sounded like maybe he was just getting a little bit impatient. He was wondering if maybe it was a calculation error, rook takes c5. But I don't think there's a calculation error because there's no concrete attack for white after rook takes c5. I think it's a bit of impatience. He just didn't feel he had any great moves in the position. He wasn't sure what to do, and this knight looked powerful. Knight to d3 is a threat. And he just decided to sack rook takes knight to try to create an attack, which we'll see coming up. So one thing that white could play here, I think it's a really nice option and an instructive point. Pawn to e6. Free that bishop. That's the bad bishop that's trapped in by your pawns. Try to free that guy. And if I play knight takes e6, bishop to e5 can be played. Now let's take tabs of the imbalances here. I'm up one pawn, black's up a pawn. White has more activity though, and this bishop, which was the worst piece on the board for white, is now the strongest piece for white. And only at the cost of a pawn. White has more mobility than black now. So if I'm playing white here, I think e6 is a great move. Even though the computer says still advantage for black, this gives some good fighting chances. Rook takes c5 though, I think now black is definitely in the driver's seat, and it just comes down to conversion. Okay, rook to a4 played, and I asked him after the game if this was the plan, and I was thinking about it mid-game. He said yes. He wants bishop takes h6 and swing his rook across for the attack in combination with that queen cutting through the diagonal. So I play bishop to b4, cutting off the rook from swinging across, and I'm also thinking maybe I'll play a5 to defend that bishop. Pawn to e4 played. That's a nice move, trying to open things up a bit. Bishop could come to e3. He wants this trade. That bishop really wants to come to c4, pointing at my king. So I play pawn to a5. Secure that bishop. I'm not too worried about pawn takes pawn. I know I have the rook defending it. So that trade happens. Knight c4, queen d8, knight d6. All right, it does feel like white's getting some activity here. I mean, he definitely is. I'm up only 2 points of material, just up the exchange. The knight now attacks the b7 pawn. So here I had a deep think, and I realized I have a move that's a little bit double-edged. It potentially opens up my king. It does open up my king. It potentially opens me up to an attack, I should say. I play pawn to g5. And the reason I play pawn to g5 is this bishop now has to make a decision. Either he goes back to g3 or he goes back to e3. And if he goes to g3, that's what he did in the game, I'm going to play rook to d2, forking bishop and queen. And if he goes back to e3, now my plan is bishop takes d6, and I'm going to win the pawn. So white has the bishop pair for now a rook and a pawn. I think this 3-point material advantage should still be pretty easy to convert, but the bishops are active. So my opponent played bishop to g3, not as good as back to e3. So this move did pay off. Rook to d2 with the fork, win the bishop, queen b6, and I was able to take the rook back, and white resigned in this position. So here I think the key takeaway is playing against that bad bishop. So if we go back to around this position, once that was a bad bishop on f4, I can play against that bishop, formulate my whole game plan around it, and really just try to take a balanced approach, and not only play with that bishop, but play with the queen side at the same time. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to point you now to the other game that I played in this very similar line. If you're interested more in this line, I think you'll like that video as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.